Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, and that means the great one. Rick Bozich joins us from WDRB. I come up with great things. All I can think of are great things when I think of you. So, the Hall of Fame, you're the Hall of Famer. That comes out so easy. You're a USBWA Hall of Famer. He's just covers everything, and Louisville, Indiana, Kentucky, everything in general, and has done it for a long time, and so in such a great manner. And I've said this before, and I know Louisville fans will not agree, Kentucky fans will not agree, but I think you're the most unbiased guy. You've just always been able to. It seems like you don't piss people off, but yet you still do, because they're the fans and they take it a certain way, but you do it less than anybody I've ever seen, which is a trait.
If that's a good thing or a bad
possess.
thing. Yeah, I mean, I think I pissed people off more when I was younger. I know that I did for sure. But, these days people get mad about the strangest things, and they get mad, if you don't cover them and you do this and you do that. So you just can't. You can't worry about it. Just be honest to yourself and true to yourself and write what you believe. I think that we've gotten to a point sometimes in the sports media where people take exaggerated opinions, either overly praiseworthy or overly critical, that they don't really believe, just because they think it'll draw attention to themselves. And I've tried never to fall into that trap. But so thank you for saying that, though.
Well, you're someone that I absolutely respect and love to try to follow. I haven't done a great job, as always, of keeping my trap shut. The ADHD does not help me with that. It's like Indiana football. I don't want to talk negative about them every day. There are positive things. They've got some great players. They've got good talent. I think they have 7-win talent on that team. They've got a quarterback who, if developed properly, can probably be a good quarterback. Hell, they may have 2 that could be really good quarterbacks if developed. They've got good receivers. The line, I'm not sure about. Defense, I thought were solid, but yet it's the mistakes keep seeing being made, and I don't know about the secondary. When I think that they're good, well, maybe we'll find out next week against Maryland. But
you will.
It's a weird thing, but it is what it is, and nothing is going to change. So people stop calling for a job change. That ain't happening. That's just because of contracts. So,
I think there's 2 ways to look at Indiana football. One is just, the micro and the macro. The micro is this year and this team and what they should have done so far and what they should do the rest of the way. And, realistically, I think most people would have said at this point in the season they were going to be 2-2, and they are 2-2. Could have been 3-1, could have easily been 1-3. So they are, what people projected. I don't think they played to their potential. And what drives people crazy is when they got very simple things to do, like be able to run the ball for 1 yard, not just against Louisville, but against Akron. They can't do it. And if that's a foundational piece of football, and if you can't do that, you're in trouble. Going the rest of the way, they're going to be an underdog in every game. They should still be able to, I think they should still win at least 1 more, maybe 2, because Michigan State, Purdue, even Illinois, not very good teams. The problem is for them, they got to play 5 teams they probably can't beat until they get to those teams. So you don't know what the buy-in level is going to be in the locker room. Then you got the macro picture of saying, being at this point 7 years into a coach's program isn't good. And at any school that really takes football seriously, if a coach was in this position 7 years in, there would be no doubt about what would happen. As you said, it's probably not going to happen at Indiana because of the contract. But even if they can't make a coaching change, they need to do other things for the program to elevate, the seriousness of the commitment to football. Because as we've talked about on the show a million times, Indiana is way far behind in what the administration commits to football compared to other schools. And they got to be where Maryland is. They've got to be where Iowa is. They've got to be where Wisconsin is. They're not going to be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, whoever. But they got to be where those other schools are. And they haven't been. And somebody needs to figure it out and fix it.
Well, that has not happened yet.
It hasn't happened for 40 years. I mean, this happened after Mallory left. This has been since Mallory left. Really, it has.
That's what I'm just shocked by the contracts that get written to the people they get written to. And like I said, I love Tom Allen as a person, one of the greatest people I've ever had the fortune to be around. But how do you give him that contract with his experience and whatever off of 1 year? Just like Michigan State and Mel Tucker.
2 years.
There's nothing more, or 2 years rather, nothing more idiotic than what Michigan State did. That was the dumbest, absolutely most ignorant contract to be given after a successful season in the history of sports. It was like, what? The guy comes in with a bunch of transfers and has a great season, and he's worth $100 million.
I've never been an administrator, so I feel unqualified really to talk about contracts and things like that. But I guess what I would say if somebody asked me is the buyout in the contract should never be more than what a school could afford to pay if it needed to make a change. And, everybody, I guess what happened was they had back-to-back years. They got a bunch of positive publicity. They had a guy who really wanted to be at Indiana. There was some speculation that he could go for another job. I don't know what it would have been at the time. I can't remember. But it's like you shouldn't write a contract with a buyout that you can't afford to pay, because then it's irrelevant. The buyout's irrelevant. The buyout becomes an obstacle instead of what it really is meant to be. The buyout is meant to be, if this isn't working, we can afford to pay this much money to change, right? I mean, it's
the most business. These athletic contracts are the complete opposite of a business contract. There's no business that would write this. Now you do see a lot of these CEOs get with these golden parachutes that have crushed companies. So it does happen at some places. It has not ever happened to me. I can tell you that.
Or me.
Rick, do you have a $20 million buyout?
No, I don't have any buyout. I'm sure you don't have a buyout. But I mean, that just seems to be, I don't know. But there's always coaches.
Why is there not?
This isn't the only place this has ever happened. There's a lot of Louisville got stuck with paying Bobby Petrino however many, $14 million. $14 million for 3 years for not doing anything. Jimbo Fisher's contract is ridiculous. Charlie Weiss's contract was ridiculous at Notre Dame. They were paying it for a number of years. There's some basketball ones that I can't think of here. I mean, Archie Miller getting $10 million was ridiculous.
Well, getting $26 million for 4 years of crap was ridiculous. That was just a waste of $26 million. Indiana also had I think an $8 million buyout for Crean at the end when things went south, something like that.
Yeah, and then it got offset a little bit when he got the job at Georgia. But there are other ones. But
if you add that that $8 million to, I add the entire $26 million to Archie Miller. So now you're looking at well over 30. Now you're dealing with this, and it's because of just bad hires and bad contracts. Why aren't wins included in these contracts? You have to achieve to get this, and if you don't, we walk away. If you do, you get this. And you've got to put the carrot out there, but they're not. They give them the carrot and the stick, and they hand them the stick as well.
But, I'll say that's true. But the bigger problem for Indiana isn't just that. The bigger problem is after Mallory was let go, starting in the late 80s, early 90s, whenever it was, over the next however many years that is, 35, whatever, they needed to be investing in the program in other ways. They finally have done some in recent years with the end zone projects they've done in the weight room, but there was a 15 or 20-year period where they didn't put any money at all in football, and other schools did, and they fell further and further behind. And I can just sit here and compare it to Louisville in terms of, since I've been covering Louisville, of building a stadium, adding on to the stadium, adding on to it again, being aggressive and going after big name coaches, and the practice facility that got built, just all the different things they've done here. And so when they made a coaching change this year to bring Jeff Brom in, it's seamless, and they're not dealing from being in a place of a huge disadvantage. They can go out and they can go out and recruit people and say, we take football seriously here. I think at Indiana, there's still a subtext of people are not convinced the school is all in on football, and they need to change that perception, and they need to change the reality of it.
Well, I don't know that they are all in on football, and I've also, and this is heard, the president has made a ton of cuts in various places. One place I see that I think that will be is Indiana Law had their sports information director retire, and I do not think his position will be replaced. Not to say that they don't have someone, right. They do, but it's not there. A new person was not brought in or elevated to that role and that role only, because Indiana had someone who JD just covered IU basketball, which that is an animal unto itself. Some schools do have Louisville Kit Klingelhofer forever did everything for IU,
right? All
sports. Now they have somebody for each sport at Louisville for the longest time. And gosh darn it, I'm blanking on his name. Kenny Klein, one of the greatest SIDs, handled everything with ease. But that's not, they don't do that today. Everybody's got someone to basically for promotion is what it is. But the long story short is we're not going to have that. And I think that hurts. But anyway, that also makes me wonder then if when Indiana starts to collect this big Big Ten money, when it starts to roll in, is that going to get siphoned off onto other things instead of athletics? The stadium has to be brought up to standards. They have to build suites. It's just it's a no-brainer to me. And you've always got those empty corner seats. Just build the thing that everybody else has already, and if nothing else, it'll make it look better because you'll have less empty seats and you can't see who's inside those walls or not.
I don't disagree with you. You got to make it. You got to give people a reason to come to the game, and if you're not giving them a winning product, you have to give them a good experience. Of saying you can go to the game and have something nice to drink, watch something on TV that you need to watch before, during the game, or whatever, and good food and easy in and out and all that stuff, and internet and all the things that people expect now when they go to games. They have it at Kentucky when they've remodeled their stadium several times in the last 20 years. But that's what I'm talking about.
Now, they started out with suites in the corners, which was stupid, but they fixed that, right?
3 or 4 years ago, they took out the press box and some other stuff that was in between the two decks, and they took out some seats, and they built a large suite area on I think it's the south side of the stadium, and it's very popular. A lot of people, that's their social activity on Saturday nights. They go to a UK football game and hang out, and whether it's business leaders, politicians, whatever else, that's where they sit. And until this season, they're the only ones that were able to buy alcohol in the stadium. They didn't sell beer like at regular concession stands. They only had alcohol in those suite areas. So
it was like Assembly Hall was at first.
They made those people feel special. You can have a perk that other people can't have. But what I'm saying is, and Louisville put suites in its stadium in 1998. These other places they're 20 years ahead of Indiana in the way they've approached this. That's the problem. And they're so far behind that, it's going to be hard for them to catch up.
And here's what I don't understand. Neither of those schools you just mentioned made more than Indiana, because Indiana is in the Big Ten, which is years ahead of every other conference, even the SEC, although the SEC is kind of caught up. But the money that the Big Ten schools receive and are going to receive has been there. And so they have had the opportunity to do it. They have chosen to do other things. And
I mean, drive up to Purdue and look at Purdue's football building.
Their facility is amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
look at Northwestern. How about Northwestern?
Northwestern.
On the lake. Oh my God.
So what I'm saying is, Jim, if you're a player and you're getting recruited by these schools and you look at what these other schools have and you look at what Indiana has, what messages does that send you? Not serious about football. And that's reflected, I think, a lot of times in the struggles they have in recruiting. You can't overcome that with coaching people up. I mean, they did do it when they had Kalen DeBoer.
Especially when you're not coaching them up.
Right. And another one that I'm going to talk about that when they lost those two dudes who were the strength and conditioning coaches, Ray and Ballou, that hurt them. I thought that they really did give Indiana a bit of an edge, that their players were in phenomenal shape back when those guys were there. And it was shown because, Nick Saban went out and stole them away. But when you're Indiana, you've got so little margin for error that you can't have issues like they've had of like a bad offensive line coach for 2 or 3 seasons and be slow to the switch to make a change. Now everybody, the new target this year obviously is Walt Bell, the offensive coordinator. People aren't convinced that, he's getting it done. And now you're playing, Maryland's got Loxley, who was hired after Tom Allen. And you're going in as a 2-touchdown underdog at Maryland. That's not good. 2-touchdown underdog at Ohio State or Michigan. Sure. 2-touchdown underdog at Penn State. Yeah. 2-touchdown underdog at Maryland. That's a bad sign of where your football program is. What will they be next week? Rutgers was a 24-point underdog at Michigan. So Indiana will probably be what, 28?